After a month living in the Belizean jungle, we packed our bags and crossed the border into Guatemala. We had 2 weeks to explore before returning to the same jungle home we just left. And our first stop was a tiny island called Flores. After an incredible first month with our host family in Belize, it was time for a little change of scenery. We were going to spend 2 weeks exploring Guatemala before coming back to Belize. Our host family dropped us off in San Ignacio, where we were supposed to catch a bus across the border. It was supposed to arrive on time, but it was 2 hours late. And when it finally arrived, there wasn't exactly a lot of space left. So we ended up sitting on 2 tiny folding seats in the aisle for the next 2.5 hours. After about half an hour, we reached the border. We got off the bus, walked through immigration, and then continued our journey into Guatemala. 2 hours later, we finally arrived, right in front of our hotel in Flores. Flores is a small island on Lake Petén Itzá, connected to the mainland by a causeway. The next day, we spent some time simply exploring, walking through the colorful streets, checking out little shops, and, of course, finding a McDonald's for a very important McFlurry. We took a tuk-tuk back towards the island and somehow arrived just in time. Because suddenly, the weather completely changed. Once the storm passed, we went back out. We walked along the lake, climbed up towards the church, and found a group of local kids playing basketball. We grabbed some food, sat down, and watched them play. It was a pretty perfect first taste of Guatemala. But the following morning, we had something much bigger planned. Tikal. Nearly 2 hours from Flores, deep in the Guatemalan jungle, lies one of the greatest cities of the ancient Maya civilization. At its peak, Tikal was home to tens of thousands of people and was one of the most important cities in the Maya world. And what's crazy is that what you see today is only a fraction of what's actually there. We decided to explore without a guide, just the 2 of us. So we walked deeper and deeper into the jungle, and suddenly something enormous would appear between the trees. A temple, a plaza, another massive structure. The jungle had completely taken over parts of the ancient city, and that was probably what fascinated me most. This wasn't just a collection of old ruins. This had once been a thriving city. People lived here, traded here, worshipped here, and eventually the city was abandoned. Over centuries, the jungle slowly reclaimed it. Standing there, surrounded by all that history, was surreal. Back in Flores, Jans wasn't feeling well and decided to stay at the hotel. I headed out on my own to find something to eat. But when I reached the main square, something completely unexpected was happening. The basketball court we'd seen the day before had completely transformed into a concert venue. And tonight, it was packed. Spanish music, a huge crowd, and absolutely no idea what they were singing. But I was having a great time. The band was El Tambor de la Tribu, and somehow, ending our first few days in Guatemala dancing in the middle of Flores felt like the perfect way to do it. But this was only the beginning of our 2 weeks in Guatemala. The next day, we were heading somewhere much more personal. I was about to follow in my grandfather's footsteps and search for a place he'd visited more than 15 years earlier.